Okay, so today I've got something a little different, at least for me. I mentioned in my last video or the one before, in one of the more recent ones, which really I haven't been that consistent lately, but whatever. I mentioned that I was trying to learn how to weld. So today's project is not going to be woodworking related directly, but it is related to another project that is woodworking for a different channel. So I started another YouTube channel that's purely about sign carving, and I separated it into a separate channel because it's not meant to be instructional or how-to or any of that. If you're interested, it's called The Grumpy Sign Maker. There's not anything out there yet. I'm still working on the videos for that, which is part of the reason this channel has suffered a little bit. But it is meant as a way for me to make signs about things that bug me, just because that sounds fun to me. As part of that, I need to be able to film the carving of the actual sign. And the problem I run into, I do all of my carving on my old Rubo, you've seen in some of my older videos. It works great for that. The problem is because of the way my shop is set up, it's really hard to get a good camera angle because my bench is against a wall. On either end, there's really not that much room to be able to set up a camera. I can't really set the camera up on the bench because if it's a particular cut where I'm going to be using a mallet, that's going to make the camera shake. So my idea is to make a telescoping arm of sorts for my tripod. And the way this is going to work, so my main tripod takes these little quick release plates. The idea is that there's a screw in it that goes into the base of your camera, you're ready to go. And for a normal camera, that works fine. My new camera, the camera I'm shooting this on now, I also use for astrophotography and a bunch of other things. So it has this big L bracket on it so that I can shoot panoramas with the camera in portrait mode as opposed to landscape. Anyway, because of that, it doesn't take a normal mount. You have to use one of these. So my idea is I am going to take some 1-inch steel tube. This is 1 inch by 1/16 thick. I'm going to cut a piece a little bit longer than that base plate. And then I've got this other piece of 3/4 inch tubing that can slide in here. And there is a bit of a gap. It's not a tight fit. But what I'm going to do is on the end of the 3/4 inch piece, I'm going to weld in a bolt sticking out of the end, a 3/8 inch by a 3/8, what is it? I think it's 3/8 16 pitch bolt that'll stick out here, and then I'm going to drill a hole through and have one sticking up. And the one sticking up, I'm just going to tack weld that in place. The reason for that is the base on this mount here is 3/8 with a 16th pitch. So I could screw this mount on here, of course put the camera on top, and then set up my tripod to the side of the bench and then slide this in and out so that it's going over the bench. And then with this type of a head, it's a ball head, so if you loosen it, the head is very, very adjustable. So then I can point the camera kind of wherever I want. I can get it really low, just barely above the bench. The key feature is it won't be touching the bench, so if I'm doing any mallet work, it shouldn't affect the picture quality. And it's basically going to be infinitely adjustable. I think this is a 3-foot, yeah, this is a 3-foot piece. So depending on how long of a piece of 1-inch tube that this fits into, I should have roughly 30 inches of travel on that. So that gives me some options. And by having a bolt on the top and on the end, then I could have the camera pointed straight down if I need to. It gives me a lot of options. And if I decide that's not enough, of course later I could come back and add another bolt on the other side. So to make this all work, a couple things have to happen. I do want to make this a snugger fit, so there's not as much rattle and play. To accomplish that, I'm going to drill 2 holes into the sides, and I'm going to weld on some 1/4 inch nuts, and then I'm going to use some 1/4 20 nylon thumb screws that I can thread through the holes that I'll drill to kind of tighten themselves just enough so that the bar, the telescoping bar, doesn't wobble. It'd be kind of like the bearings on a bandsaw, just there to, they may contact it, they're there to just kind of keep it in place so it doesn't rattle so much. So those need to be welded in place. The other thing I need to do is on the bottom, I'm going to weld two 3/8 inch nuts. And the reason for that is, so with this plate here, actually I'm going to use this one because it's a little more beat up. I can take two 3/8 inch camera mounting screws and slide those in and then space them out a little bit. And the idea is that where these two are, that's kind of where the bolts are going to be that are welded to the bottom of the tube, just so that I've got two mount points instead of one to try to strengthen it a little. I don't know that it really needs it, but my camera is kind of heavy, so I figure it's not that much more work, and these screws came in a 5-pack, so I might as well. And I can basically leave this dedicated to that because I have a whole separate mounting plate to use for something else. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. Oh, one other thing. So the tube that's going to mount here, the part that will be stationary, in order to make it a little more stable, I'm not just going to have the piece of tube with the two nuts. That might work fine, but I just want to bulk it up a little bit. I don't want to risk any part of this being weak because that's my main camera and it was expensive. So what I'm probably going to do is I'll have the main piece of tubing that the extendable part will pass through, and on the sides I'll probably tack on two more sections of the tubing or something else, maybe some angle iron, I haven't decided yet, that will sit flush with the face of the plate when it's bolted on. So it's just got a little more support. Will it really make a difference? I don't know, but it's not that much more work, and I'm going to have plenty of tubes, so I figure it's worth a shot. So now we need to cut the tubing to length. Now to weld this together, I'm going to use, I've got just a little Harbor Freight flux-core wire welder. Nothing fancy. I think it was like $110 or something. I've been really trying to learn stick welding, but with how thin this tube is, I'm not confident yet that I can weld this without just destroying the tube. The wire feed one is a little easier, so that's the reason I'm going to use that welder over the stick. Just, I'm not good enough at stick welding yet. Okay, so the welding is done, the painting, the grinding is all done. So I'm going to show you how it all goes together, and I've also got some ideas already on how to improve it. So since I have some leftover 1-inch pipe, at some point in the future I'll probably make a new one of these. Anyway, let's take a look at how it goes together and then show you how it works, and we'll go from there. Okay, so let's start off with the base. So I ended up doing 2/4 inch nuts here and here and one on top. Each of those 5 needs a 1/4 20 nylon thumb screw. Now we don't want to put any of them all the way through. We don't want to tighten them up all the way. These are going to act sort of as a bushing, I guess, because a 3/4 inch tube has a lot of play inside of the 1-inch tube. So this is just to take up the slack and make it a little more steady. So I'm just going to thread these in just enough so that they're just barely exposed on the inside of the 1-inch tube. Okay, that part is done, so let's go ahead and put in the one on top. This will be the one that will actually secure the tube, the inner tube, at whatever position you want it at. So now that this is put together, we want to flip it over and attach our mounting plate for the tripod. I'm going to take the base. I don't know how well I can get a good angle on this with the camera, but I'm just going to line those up with the 3/8 bolts on the bottom. And then thread those in. And with these, because they're kind of held in the same plane, you want to try to, you can't screw one all the way in and wait till the end to do the other one. You kind of have to thread them both at the same time, kind of go back and forth. Get those in snug and then tighten it up with a screwdriver or whatever. And now the base is ready to go. So the next thing is the arm. And on the arm, there's one end with a nut. The other end has 2 bolts on it. One sticking out of the end and this one here. This one here obviously can't slide through this 1-inch pipe, so it can only go through from this end. Now as far as which end faces forward, it doesn't really matter, but I want this end forward just because. So I'm going to slide the longer tube through with this bolt sticking thread side up. And I'm going to put it through about halfway just so the weight is kind of even. And then I'm going to tighten up these thumb screws just a little. I wanted to just make contact, so that's a little too snug. So I'm going to back them off just like a 1/8 of a turn. There we go. That's fairly smooth, and now I can lock it in place. And there we go. So the one improvement I mentioned that I think I would like to make to this, if I make another one, is now that these thumb screws are in and they're acting as bushings, my side-to-side play is minimized, but the up and down, there's still some play there. So for version 2, what I think I would do is, instead of doing any more nuts on the top, I would do 2 more 1/4 inch nuts here and here so that I could have a thumb screw on either one of those. The reason for that, for having just those and not on top, is I've got this one on top holding it in place. So when I loosen it, if I'm loosening it just enough to be able to move it, and I have these other 2 on the bottom applying pressure from the bottom, I think that'll be enough to take up most of the slack, because we've got 2 points on this end with a pivot point in the middle. Because we'd have it distributed between 3 different points, I think that would be fairly steady. But this is good enough for now, so I'm going to hook this up on the camera, and then we'll kind of take a look and show you how it works. One other thing before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and mount this ball head on. Okay, now we'll hook it up. Okay, so here's my tripod, and I'm just going to put the base on here and slide it back. Mine clicks in place, thumb screw on the side to lock it in. Now if we zoom out, so you can kind of see I can loosen this here and extend this arm, move it back and forth in either direction. somewhat smoothly. Like I said, it's not perfect, but when I'm happy with the position, I can lock that down, and then all of the other adjustments are going to come from the tripod, so I can adjust the angle and traverse. But that's basically it. So I'm going to switch cameras. I'm going to take the good camera and put it on here and use my cell phone so I can show this actually in action, so you can see why I wanted to do this. Okay, so to start off, there's my camera on the tripod over my bench, and here's a sign I'm working on. I flipped it over because it's a secret project. I don't want anyone to see it. But what I want to show you is I'm going to demonstrate this Veritas quick release bench dog, wonder dog thing. I can't remember what they call it. I think it's called the quick release wonder dog. Anyway, I'm going to show you using different angles that I can now get with this mount how this setup works. So first off, I've got some of the 3/4 inch Veritas aluminum bench dogs here, just in my bench, and I'm going to slide my sign blank up against those. See, I'm able to get that in nice and close. So now I'm going to rotate the camera a bit, and then we're going to slide this down. So now I've extended the arm almost as far as it'll go. It's in nice and close on the work, and as you can see from this camera angle, I've got a really good shot of the bench dog. And then if I zoom out, let's rotate the camera away a bit. Here we've got kind of a wider shot so you can see that whole area. So hopefully this kind of demonstrates the problem I was trying to solve, how this doohickey kind of solves that problem and improves some of the camera angle options that I'm now able to get. So one other thing so by having this nut welded in the rear, I've got this eye bolt screwed in there, and this way I can hang a weight from here if I needed to, if I had this extended really far out and I didn't want to have to worry about the tripod tipping in one direction. One other thing that I don't think I got very good video of, so I'll just try to demonstrate it here. So to hold these nuts in place, of course I drilled the holes first, since these screws need to be able to pass through, and then when I went to weld these, I took a 1/4 inch bolt and threaded it through the nut and then clamped it in place. The reason I did that is by having that bolt going through that and the hole that I'd already drilled here, it helps to keep it maybe not perfectly centered, because the hole that I drilled was slightly larger than 1/4 inch, but it at least keeps it in a position so that once the nut is welded in place, there's still clearance for this screw to go through. So I did that on all 4 of these and this one, and the 2 on the bottom, since those are not through holes, I didn't worry about it there. I did clamp them in place so they wouldn't move, but there's no hole drilled, so I didn't have to put a bolt in there. I just used the clamps, little C-clamp, to hold the nut in place as I tacked it in there. I know some of the welding shots weren't that great. I need to work on, there's another little jig I'm working on to hold a welding lens in front of my camera so that I can get some better shots. I know these welds aren't the prettiest. I'm brand new at it, so if you don't like them, I don't care. I'm getting better. So there you go. That is my DIY extendable camera arm thing. If you have any ideas on how this design could be improved, let me know. I have enough tubing left to make at least 1, maybe 2 more of these, so I'd be interested in any other ideas people might have. Of course, one thing that could be done with this counterweight arm in place, I could make another arm longer. This was a 3-foot piece of stock. I think Home Depot carries it in 4-foot lengths as well. For where I'm using this over my bench, I don't need to go that far. My bench is like 28 inches across, I think, so this does plenty well, as I demonstrated, to get all the way across the bench. I'm happy with it. It's not super pretty. The paint that I used kind of sucks. It's scratching off already. If anybody knows of a better paint to use on raw steel, that's some feedback I'd like as well. Hopefully, if you do any filming, maybe this can help you out in your shop or your kitchen or wherever. If you need to place your camera in odd angles, hopefully this helps, or at least gives you some ideas. And that's it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Yes, there will be a next time.